Hey everyone, it's Author Noah Barfield here, and I know recently I've been talking about how you do multiple different perspectives from various different points of view. This has been going on for a while, I get it, I understand. Which is why I'm happy to say that in this video, I'm gonna keep doing that. But don't worry, I'm almost finished, I swear. The point of view I covered last week was first person. So in this video, I'll be covering how you do multiple different perspectives from the third person limited point of view. Now, I've been really psyched to do Third Person Limited, and one of those reasons is because I just finished reading Leigh Bardugo's Six of Crows novel, which is separate from her Grisha trilogy, and I hope I said all those words correctly. This novel reminded me not only why I continue to read literature written in this century, but also that I can feel genuine emotions for the characters in a story whenever it's written from the third person point of view, which hasn't happened in a long time for me. So it's an incredible experience, and I've been reading lots of other stories written from the third person limited point of view. I've been working on a story idea in my head that's written from that perspective, and all of this is just compounded together to make me really happy and excited to do this video. So I will be giving 5 tips on how you write the third person limited point of view with various different perspectives. And I know last week I said a few words on genre, so I will be saying even fewer words on genre this time, just as a refresher or as an introduction to the new people, hey, for just chiming in for the first time. Basically, you don't have to worry about genre so much or stress out about it really. It's not the end-all be-all of what has to be included within your story. You don't have to listen to them whenever they're like, oh, you gotta write in first person. If third person is what's best for you, you do that. You have an obligation to express yourself creatively, to do what is best for you, your story, and the unique feel that all readers deserve from their writers, regardless of what genre dictates or says is standard. That means you don't have to be limited by your point of view, your themes, or the various different minute details you feel like including within your story. So what if genre's like, nope, can't do it? Screw genre. You don't have to be limited by what you're working in or dictated by the genre that you're in. And now that I've gotten that out of the way, again, let's move on to the tips. First off, keep your characters connected. I know this may seem nitpicky, but I'm really trying not to be. But I've noticed in my readings there are a few things that separate the really great novels written from the third person point of view from the, well, abysmal ones. And one of those things is connection. In the good stories, the characters are connected. They know each other or they know of each other. While in the not so good ones, these characters are not connected. They're spread out and it's a jumbled mess that's difficult to read. This is something that people who write in first person really don't have to worry about. We're already connected. We're zoomed in quite as close as we can. We're inside the souls of these characters, whether we want to be or not. Zooming out is a problem we have to deal with. Whenever you're writing from third person, you are zoomed out. You get a top-down view of everything. It's a little more laid back, you have a little more freedom. But you also have to have a little more self-control. Because if you don't keep the story focused on where it should be, which is the characters, the plot, the location, and the little details that really make your story pop, it's going to spiral out of control really quickly and you're not going to know what to do with it. Keeping these characters connected is a great way to keep it focused and zoomed in on where it should be. Now you always have the option to zoom out. That's one of the great things about third person. And whenever you're writing multiple different perspectives, you have a world you want to explore. And keeping multiple different perspectives zoomed in is a great way to do that, because you basically drag a magnifying glass around the map of your story with these different characters. And it also keeps the story from seeming incoherent. It keeps it coherent and cohesive, and these characters stick together. Now, secondly, intimacy. I know intimacy is something I talk about a lot. It's starting to get kind of creepy. But again, this is something that people writing in first person don't have to deal with. They are already pretty intimate with the characters. We know their thought processes, and we're so intimate with them that it's kind of difficult to sleep at night because we always have their thoughts in our heads, and that's weird. But whatever. Whenever you're writing from the third person, you don't have that. And whenever you're writing multiple different perspectives, you really have to build the intimacy of these characters. And if you don't have your characters connected, then the sole responsibility of making sure that you get intimate with the character that you're reading about is on the shoulders of that character. Whereas whenever you're writing with characters that are connected, you kind of get to feel how they interact with each other. It brings out their different emotions, their actions, their reactions, their dialogue, their speech, how they act around people, and it's a great way to bring out the different iconic traits of your characters without having to constantly focus on one. Now third, set the boundaries on your location. And I know, this sounds nitpicky again, but if you have a vast world, as is common, you're going to need to zoom in and set boundaries, because if you don't, again, spiraling, it's going to be dangerous. So whenever you keep it zoomed in, we not only get to know these characters, but we also get to be familiar with their setting and their world, which makes it more believable and allows us to suspend our disbelief, which is crucial to any great story. For instance, in Lee Bardugo's Six of Crows novel, you not only have a great cast that's always connected with each other in some way or another, but they're also in only a couple locations. This is a vast world that you constantly get to hear about in dialogue and conversation and how people are acting towards other people from different countries, but it's really only located in 2 different places, and that allows us to get very familiar with it really quickly and understand these characters' lives and their troubles and struggles they go through. For instance, in Harry Potter, we're constantly seeing Harry interact with other people, but it's all contained within Hogwarts or within a short distance of it most of the time. And this is a great lesson to take note of. Keeping your characters in several different smaller locations in this vast world, but still getting little tidbits of information in, slowly builds this big world on the outside, but also keeps it focused in, allowing it to be more intimate and more relatable to the readers. Fourth, keep your cast a little smaller. Make sure that you have defined your cast early on, because whoever you bring in, you're going to have to keep bringing them in if you want us to remember them. You can't be like, brought in Zargog the Destroyer once, the readers probably remember him, and I'll bring him in at the end. No, that's not how it works. We constantly have to keep refreshing our memory of these characters, and the larger the cast, the more difficult that's going to be. Whenever you have a larger cast, you also have to spend more time developing intimacy with each one. If they're interacting with each other, that's a little easier to do, but keeping a smaller cast allows us to be able to relate more to these characters. And whenever you're writing in the third person, it's very, very easy to want to zoom out, to have lots of different characters, to have a really big world, but you're going to have to really resist that temptation, at least at first, until we've grown accustomed with it. And you can slowly include more characters, but the less characters you have, the more intimacy you have with them. But this is also something you have to keep in mind. The less characters you have, the more pressure that falls on those characters' shoulders. Fifth point, keeping your characters' voices distinct. I know, I covered this in the first person point of view video last week, I get that, but it is just incredibly important to do. Make sure that your characters' voices are distinct, because we're going to want to get to know these characters, and we cannot do that if we don't know who's talking. Again, that's important whenever you're writing first person, but it's really easy to dissociate from these characters whenever we're not, 1, right in their faces all the time, and 2, whenever we don't get to know about them because they just seem like every other character. They just seem like that street rat that they just encountered, or they have about as much personality as the wall that they're constantly leaning on. These are things that you have to keep in mind whenever you're writing them, the distinction of your voices. So make sure your characters' voices are distinct, and a great way to do that is to make sure that your cast is small, your location is defined, your characters are building intimacy with the reader, and that they're connected with each other. Then those distinct voices really start to show it through their actions, their reactions, their speech, how they feel about each other, show their emotions in the little ways. Showing, not telling is a great way to make sure that your characters' voices remain distinct, because you don't rely on internal thought processes, as is oftentimes done with first person point of view, and this really gives you an edge over all the other writers and points of view out there. So this has been the 5 tips, and I hope it has been helpful. These are just different things that I have found helpful in considering whenever I'm writing stories from the third person limited point of view, and I hope that you will consider at least some of them whenever you're writing next. So thank you for watching. Here's why I brag about my book. Legendland, this beautiful masterpiece, is on Amazon. It's also on my store on www.arc-storm.com. We're also now available on Barnes & Noble and Nook, so we're kind of everywhere. Go ahead and check that out, and don't forget to subscribe. Tell everyone else you know to subscribe, because that's really helpful. You can contact me anywhere, Facebook, Twitter, my website, anywhere you want to, or just leave a comment below. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you continue to enjoy.